As soon as I took the lead, for the next 6 months, I made zero money in brand deals. I don't love that aspect of having most of my income coming from brand deals because it's so volatile. It's up and it's down. Like I just feel like I'm relying on another company paying me and also paying me my worth, what I want them to pay me. But I think we have to allow ourselves to build something. We have to go for it, persist at it, and be consistent with it. And I think that, if anything, is my superpower because I have a story behind the beauty. There's a story behind how I show up. And I don't take that for granted at all.
This is Jenn Jackson. She is a beauty creator making over $90,000 per year, teaching women how to love and care for their natural hair, while also guiding them to unlock their potential as women, as mothers, and creating the lives that they didn't know were possible. Inspired as a way for her to deal with the loss of her father and her own hair issues, she has grown a successful creator brand that has allowed for her to quit practicing medicine and pursue being a full-time YouTuber. In this episode, we dive into her initial resistance to monetizing her channel, her initial battle with quitting being a doctor so that she could become a full-time YouTuber, the role the pandemic played in her transition away from a 9-to-5, her struggle with detaching her self-worth to money, and finding brands that value her and her audience to build successful partnerships. Jenn styles her way through this interview with all the necessary tools and products that we need to unlock our potential to be successful YouTubers. The Funded YouTuber is brought to you by Gigastar. Welcome to the Funded YouTuber, Jenn. I am so excited and really grateful that you did not ignore my random cold email request to be on our podcast today.
You were this close to being ignored. I was like, woman, delete. Oh, let me find the email again.
It's actually so funny. We're getting into it already. Like, it's so funny. Like, we creators, we get so many messages from the creepos and the like randos and the bot people that are like, I love your channel. Let me talk to you about something completely unrelated to what you talk about. And you're just like, because a lot of what I'm trying to do is like when I talk to my friends, also like I come across these really great people and I'm like, oh my God, I gotta talk to them. And then I'm like, how do I do this so I don't get deleted?
Delicate balance, trying to sift through the creepos and then, welcoming yourself to the good opportunities like this one. So I'm glad that I grabbed your email out of my trash.
Yeah, I'm really grateful too. So Jenn, tell us, what do you create on YouTube?
I have a whole channel around natural hair. So a lot of it is beauty based. And now that I'm a new mom, I don't know when it stops being new. My baby is 15 months, but I still say new because it feels new every day. I've been pivoting more into lifestyle, a little bit of motherhood, but really where I want to go is self development and like mindset. And I say this because throughout my journey, I've had to do a lot of work on my own mindset. And I just feel like I really want to help people there. So, beauty right now, lifestyle, but we're really trying to wiggle our way through the self development mindset world.
Yeah, and I think that the transition, I think that makes a lot of sense for where you started, because I would think a lot of like self-development comes into like understanding who you are and confidence in yourself and being good with who you are. And as women, part of that comes from our appearance. We were just talking offhand about how like it's a whole process to get ready. Like, your girl's hair is not this curly. It's not. I have to do this every
Yeah.
time because it's how I prefer to present myself to the world. And like it's a whole thing. Like, that's a 45-minute commitment to curl and do makeup and stuff. And I think that comes in. So it makes total sense, like that connection between hair and beauty and going into that sort of process. And on your comment too about being a new mom, I feel the exact same way. I have 2 kids. So I'm like, it's new every day because I have a boy and a girl. So it's like I did all the boy stuff and then I had a girl and I was like, it's still all new. I still don't know what I'm doing most of the time. I'm just winging it.
Yeah, I don't know when it stops being new. At least for me, it's still very new. And I'm pregnant again right now, and I'm just like, oh God, now it's gonna be even, I don't know, like win world. I'm just like taking it day by day. However, whatever happens, happens at this point.
Yeah, I love that for you. So how did you get into the natural hair content creation space?
So my story actually started from a sad story. It was when my father passed away. So my father passed away 2010, and it was a huge shock to the family. He died in an earthquake. So of course none of us were ready. And I couldn't deal with the pain. Like I didn't know, my family really handled it poorly. We didn't talk about it. It was too painful. We didn't talk about it. We didn't know how to deal with it. Therapy isn't a thing, especially in our community. I'm Haitian, and it wasn't like a thing for us. So we all dealt with it in our own way individually. And I didn't know how to deal with the pain. I didn't know what to do. And at the time I was in university and I was just like pushing through, just go to school, get your degree. That was what, the whole philosophy of how I was raised. So I just kept pushing through, but then my hair started falling out because I was just so stressed, so unhappy. I didn't know how to deal with the pain, like I said. So with that, I was like, I need to figure out this hair on my head. Like my entire life, I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't really know how to care for it, how to grow it. It was just there. And there's a whole thing when it comes to black hair in our community and how we feel about it and how we were raised around it. So I decided, like, okay, I need to face my hair, especially since it's falling out in clumps. And I knew I was too young to be bald. So I decided to start looking into it and doing research. And that's how I started finding some of these hair forums. Like, turns out there was a whole community of women just talking about their hair. And I was like, oh my God, this is exactly where I belong. So I started posting and joining some of these forums. And then I discovered YouTube shortly after. And there weren't a lot of women on YouTube talking about hair, just a few, but still it was very interesting to me. And I was like, okay, maybe I can start learning from them and figure out what to do. But one thing that I noticed early on is that there weren't a lot of women with my hair type, my kinky hair, afro hair. And I was like, wow, there's a huge gap here. And I wasn't even trying to like help the masses, but I figured if I couldn't find what I was looking for, then perhaps there's someone else that was in the same boat looking for my texture, couldn't find it, and not getting any help. So I slept on it day and night and thought about it. I was like, you know what? That could also be a good distraction for me to get away from real life. And that's how I basically stumbled across YouTube and started creating videos in my bathroom.
First of all, I'm so sorry for you had to go through that loss in such a hard and lonely way. That cannot have been easy. But I love how you took this really hard thing and you're able to turn it into something that helped you and then now is in turn helping others. At what point in your journey were you able to be like, I could make money doing this?
I ran away from making money doing this for as long as possible. I remember one of the things that I was told when I was young is you don't mix your hobby with making money because then that's going to ruin it. And that's funny, some advice that you hear as a child that stay with you for so long for whatever reason. So I never wanted to mix money with YouTube because when I started it, I loved it. I was like, oh my God, I love this new thing that I'm learning. I'm learning how to edit videos, how to create videos. I just love the creativity of it all. It wasn't even about like, oh, let me try to make that wasn't even a thought in my mind. Like never came to my mind for years. And then I accepted or got an email about the YouTube program back then. You didn't really have to like meet a threshold. You just accepted. And I was like, oh, I could make money off of this? Absolutely not. So I declined it. And I was like, I'm not mixing money with this precious hobby that I had that took me away from life, really put me in like a creative space. And that's what I loved it. I was like, I'm a creator at heart. And I love the fact that it would take me away from life. Like I would sit there and figure out how to edit for days. And that would take me away from university, take me away from grief, take me away from everything. So I did not want to monetize it. And then eventually I was like, well, why not? Since they keep sending me these emails, accept. But I still wasn't making money off of it. And I left that. I was like, oh, it's just a low key thing that I was doing. And it wasn't like stressful. There was no expectation of making money. So for the longest time, I just kept pushing it off when it came to actually monetizing my YouTube. It's a very interesting story, especially considering now people are starting YouTube to make money. And me, I was like, oh, no, absolutely not. I don't want to ruin it.
So when was your first taste of money? Like when did that happen for you?
I want to say 3 years later is when I actually got my first paycheck off YouTube. And it was one of those that you still had to reach a threshold. I think it was $100 still. And it took me forever to get there. But once I got there, like I think I got to like $80 or something. It was very close. But then because I didn't hit it, it had to roll over to the next month. So next month, I think I made like $150. And I was like, oh my God, that's very interesting. Like I didn't even know. Like it's not so bad. I could pay a little bit of my rent with that. I was a university student, so I was broke. And I was like, that's not so bad. But still, it wasn't even like motivation for me to go really hard because the way I was raised, once again, and I think a lot of immigrants or Caribbean people can relate to this, was you go to school, you get your degree, ideally you become a doctor, and that's how you make it in life. There's just this one path to success. And of course, I was well on my way to becoming a doctor. I was in university studying for biochemistry. So the path was, I'm going to be a doctor. Even though I didn't love it and I knew in my heart that it wasn't something that I really enjoyed, but that was just like, that's the only way that you succeed. So as this was happening, then I got my $150 of YouTube. It wasn't even like, oh my God, this could be a career. I could do something out of it. It was very much, okay, well, maybe this can keep me alive as I go through university.
So when did the shift happen? When did you shift from doctor to YouTuber?
I want to say so like years later, I was more into, being trying to be more consistent in YouTube. I was still creating my videos on the side. It was still like my side hustle. Didn't want to tell anybody about it. And as I kept creating, I was like, I really enjoy this. But in the back of my mind, I was like, but I need to be a doctor. Like that's the only way. And as much as I was like struggling between the two and navigating the two, and I've realized, to be fair, like once I started dealing with the grief, because I told you I never dealt with the grief of my father passing away. I just kind of like push it down a barrel and ignore. Once I actually started, okay, let me deal with this, with the pain, I realized, I don't know, like his death really taught me a lot about our own mortality. Like we're only here for a short period of time. And as much as I was following somebody else's dream to being a doctor, like what if I die at 50 like he did? Like I would go to school, get this degree, maybe work for a few years, and then not even enjoy it and then be gone. So then that's when I started like thinking about different career paths for myself. Like what do I love? What do I enjoy? What do I like? Like really exploring who I was on the inside. And I want to say around 2018 to 2020 is when I really wrestled with that idea. Like maybe I can make this work. Maybe I can make this work. Can I make this work? And that's why I'm really big on like mindset and self development now, because I've realized how blocked I was and how limited my beliefs were and how that affected me all throughout my journey as a YouTuber.
I relate and respect this so much. I grew up very similar. I grew up a military kid, and military kids are like, you go to school and you get to college, you get good grades, and then you go get a job and you stay at that job for 40 years until you die. Like since I was like probably 10, like 10 years old, like that was the protocol. I did it. Graduate top of my class, graduated the second highest, like whatever in college. And then I was like, okay, world, do the thing. And then it was like, nope, recession. It was like I felt like a failure every single day because I'm like, I did everything I was supposed to. Why isn't this working? And like I was living with my parents, I was living with my dad, sergeant dad. Like it was this, he was like, you need to get a job. Like, I'm trying. He's like, you need to get a job. Like, and I think like in hindsight, he obviously knows like it wasn't just me floundering, it was millions. But it was this a whole thing. And so it's really exploring this idea. Like my mom sent me a website and she's like, go find freelance work. And I was like, okay. And being around all of these people who are trying to like work for themselves, it's contagious. And you're like, you ask yourself these questions. I'm like, they can do it. Why can't I do it? And it just becomes this like rolling thing. And like, I was teaching people about like Facebook and MySpace and stuff and like way back in the 2009, 2010 era. And so, but it just becomes this thing where you get into this place of like, it's this combination of like, I need money, but also, why don't I do this thing that could actually make me happy? Because the idea of, I kept being told, you can't work for us. So it's obviously this whole corporate world did not want me. So like I got to make it work for myself. And you really do find that joy in doing something that and asking yourself that question of like, what is it that I can do that makes me happy that I also can pair income to? And so I love how you brought all that together. And I think my only thing that makes me sad for you is it took you so long to get there.
Oh, it took me forever to get there. And like it's also the way I grew up seeing my parents work too. Like you didn't happiness and work wasn't the same thing. Like it's just that was your duty. You just worked to take care of your family. Even if it was like miserable work, it didn't matter as long as it was providing for your family, as long as you were making money from it. Like happiness is something that what is happiness? Like it wasn't like a thing. It wasn't That wasn't the focus of life. It really was you work, you take care of your family. That's where their pride and joy came from. Like I struggled to take care of my family, even though same with us, especially our generation, we're like, well, we don't want to struggle that hard. Like I still want to fuse happiness with what I do. I want a fulfilled life. Those are things, honestly, when I talk to my mom now, she's like mumbo jumbo. Like, what are you talking about? Like, are you sure you want to quit your job? I remember the conversation I kept having with her when I was actually quitting, letting go of my job. And she was just like, you could do both. You can't just like that's not like what do you mean being happy and fulfilled? Like it's all about money will make you happy and fulfilled. Like it's not like it wasn't like I don't know, like you can be happy doing something that you love and get an income from it. It was just so separate.
Happiness was never a priority. Happiness was never considered. Happiness doesn't matter. You know what's gonna make you really unhappy? Living in your car, like, it was a lot of, like, those existing visuals.
It's a different world too, I think, from where they grew up. So I definitely give my parents grace. Like I get what they were trying to do with us and the messaging. They didn't want us to struggle the way that they struggled. And they grew. I mean, my parents grew up in Haiti, so it's a different world. You think of a third world country, you've got to have money to survive. It's just the only way. So it's about survival. And when you grow up in a place like that, where the main focus is to survive, which means you have to work to survive, and they're looking at their kids, they're like, okay, we're gonna have to instill with them everything that they know, which is go to school, get your degree, pick the best job, which is being a doctor, because that's what comes with status and money, so that you survive. So they're preparing us for a world where existed for them, but the whole digital world, digital marketing, all this new world that we have now, that's not something that was part of that they even considered. So it was very much like you got to work, make this money, and then that will make you happy. So it wasn't like I don't know. It wasn't the. It's not the way that we think about it now. And
It's been so societally and mindset transformative since COVID, really, I think, is that proof over the past like 10 years, like from 2010 to 2020, how that whole thought process just cannot exist anymore. And I know some people still eke it in there and things like that, but there's just a lot more, I think, that we want culturally and societally to make us happy and stuff like that. Like, with your comment about like you could die and what will I have done all this for? My husband and I have that very specific approach. Do I have all my ducks in a row? I have my life insurance. I have an estate plan. I have a trust in place for my kids. I have all the things, like the adulting. I've adulted, I paper adulted my butt off to make sure that we're good. But I also want to live and I want to experience this amazing world full of stuff. So like we prioritize traveling and going places and we pay it like a bill. Like it's that necessary for us because we're like, because we see so many people that are like, oh, I worked all my life and then I can go travel and see things. I'm like, then you can't enjoy it. My husband and I went to Rome for like a vacation together. We had been going hard at parenting and life like 9 years and we went on a vacation. And we went to do a tour of the Colosseum. And there was this super old couple that was there. And it was their once in a lifetime trip. And the man had like a walker and his wife had a cane and they had to leave the tour because they couldn't climb the steps to get inside. And even with like having elevators and access, they still just like it was too far for them to walk to get in. And I'm like, I cannot, I could never. I'm not saying live frivolously and dumb now, but I think it's really finding the balance of like what are your life priorities and interweaving them into your day to day, week to week, month to month, rather than just like I'm going to do that later because later may never come.
absolutely. And it's ironic because as much as my parents worked really, really hard for us to be where we are today, and I say us because I have two brothers, so I always gotta think of us as a package. As much as they worked so hard and we're so grateful for everything that they've done, but the things that we criticize them for, I would say, is the fact that when we were growing up, they weren't around. Like they were working all the time, like, Mom, you weren't there. You weren't saying I love you. It's all the things that like the emotional piece and like the time that we wanted to have with them. That's what mattered to us as kids. But then to them, it's like, I got to make this money so that you have things, so that I can buy you material things. And we're like, we didn't care about the new toys and books or whatever. What we wanted is time with you. And I think about now that I have children, I think about that a lot. It's like, I want to have that work life balance where okay, I'm working and I'm still providing for them, obviously, and I want to provide for myself too. I like expensive things, but I also want to make sure that I have that time to spend with them, to travel, like you said, to enjoy life, the present now, because we never know what's going to happen, and we think we'll have time later on, but later is not always promised.
My kids have never known me not working for myself or not being a content creator ever. They're 10 and 8. I've done it their whole life and before. So it's really that like strategic. They get to have that really unique experience and stuff. So you had mentioned though earlier that you were talking to your mom about like making the transition and stuff from quitting your job and stuff. What were the circumstances that you had in place that allowed for you to go full time?
So for me, it happened after the pandemic. So the pandemic was a huge, my second, I could say, wake up call throughout my journey, because I was just operating from a place of fear. I was very much trying to juggle both of them, my career as well as content creation. I didn't know what was truly possible in the content creation world. So I was very scared to take the leap. And then the pandemic happened, and that's what made me realize how stressed I was at my career, how much I didn't really enjoy it, but I felt like I had to do it. I had to go to work. It was just what I've done my entire life. So there was no question around it. It was the same path as my parents, I guess. Happiness is not at work. You create your own little happiness afterwards or when you go home. So I realized then with the pandemic, when everything slowed down, how I actually didn't like the life that I was living, in terms of it was just go 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 all the time. Like I would wake up and go to work, spend all day at work, and I used to always work overtime hours. So I would come home maybe 8 9 p.m., and that's, I don't know, a couple of hours to just kind of unwind and then do it all over again. I wasn't really living, at least not in a way that I now would want to. So pandemic happened, everything slowed down, and it really got me thinking about the life that I was living, especially when they wanted us to go back to the office because I was working from home for a little bit. And then I realized, wow, that's not really what I want. But I still had this YouTube career that I was going at for a while. And that's when I was like, okay, I need to make a decision. Like, what do I value? What do I imagine my life to look like in the future? So I didn't really have like a huge plan per se, but I was with my husband now, but we weren't married then. And I feel like this poor man, I've talked his ears off for like years. Like, oh my gosh, should I quit? Should I quit? I think I could do it. Is it gonna work? Like this just uploading on him for the longest time. And around the pandemic, that's when I was more intentional with my content creation. I was making a lot more online. And it got that year, I think it was 2021, I made more online than I made at my 9 to 5. That's when I was like, Jen, you have no more excuses. Like you've been saying, okay, you don't know, you're not sure. What if it doesn't work out? It's very inconsistent. But in that year, I made more, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take the lead. That was the last thing that I needed, the last reassurance, like you could say. So I, of course, had to talk to like everyone in my family to like really make sure. Like, what do you think? Do you think it's gonna work? Like, I was so scared to even talking about it now. I feel like my palms are getting sweaty because it was like this huge decision for me. It was going left from everything that I was thought and raised to do. Like, what do you mean creating content online? That's not a thing. So I talked to my mom about it. And with that conversation, she instilled even more fear into me. She was like, there is a war in Russia. Have you not heard? And I was like, what in Russia? Like, what does that have to do with me? Like, I'm already terrified about this decision. And she's bringing all the world events into it. And I'm like, I feel like it's never going to be the perfect time. There's always going to be something. And while I have this momentum online, I might as well just ride the wave. So that was basically what ultimately got me to take the leap. And I was like, if it doesn't work out, maybe I'll go back to work. Like I will see what happens. So even then, I ended up taking a leave of absence at work just in case it didn't work out because I was still so terrified about making that transition.
I don't think there's anything wrong with being cautious. Like the creator economy space is a wonderful mess. It's a great place to build something fantastic, but it's always changing on us and always without our say or desire. And so I think that making that strategic move was probably what was best for us. Everyone has their own ways that they do it. So I love this podcast. Everyone has found full-time creator success in their own different ways. And that's why I love shining lights on the stories in the path so that everyone can find the one that makes sense to them so they can like know it's possible, right? So in all of this, you go full time, you're doing this stuff. When was a time that you had a horrible money experience through this?
It's funny, I would say as soon as I let go of my 9 to 5, that's when it happened. It was a huge dip in income. And it's crazy because I think I was just myself was so terrified about this move that I had made. And as soon as I took the leap, I signed under a management company. And I was like, oh, it's all gonna work out. They're gonna have my back, especially in the brand deal world. That was basically what the transaction was supposed to be like. They were gonna bring me brand deals, and I was just gonna do what I do best, which is create content. Perfect. And as soon as I took the leap, for the next 6 months, I made zero money in brand deals. Like nothing from they didn't get me any work. And of course, now it's mind you, I was already terrified to make this decision, which I did. And then I made no money for the next 6 months. And I was just like, whoa, like, did I make the wrong move? I shouldn't have done that. And of course, it starts playing in your mind. Like, what did I do? What have I done? And the one thing that you said, like we all kind of find like as creators found our own way to make things work. But I think we have to allow ourselves to build something. We have to, I don't know, like go for it and like persist at it and be consistent with it. And for me, I was just like, whew, whew, oh, it's hot over here. Maybe I should go back to work. Oh, no, I was terrified. So I would say that the first 6 months was really rough, and I was very much in my mind about it. And I thought it was me. Is it like all my insecurities came to the surface? Is it my hair? Is it my skin color? Am I not going to be able to be successful online? I really internalized that moment. So I was very much down and like depressed for the next 6 months, especially, the way I grew up. You got to make money to be somebody. And I was making no money and I had to let go of my job. So I was in a rough space.
I think your whole you have to make money to be somebody. That's a very like specific mindset situation. Like you can't be successful without money and things like that. I say all the time, you can't if you're not making money, it's just a hobby and then it's unsustainable. So it's about figuring out that balance for sure.
My whole identity was attached to my 9 to 5, first of all. So when I let that go, I struggled with that. It's not like I was saving lives. I wasn't even doing something that was so important. But my entire identity was attached to that job. So when I let that go, I struggled. And even the whole mindset around money, where if I'm not making any, then I'm a nobody. And it's like, again, that was just messaging when I grew up that weren't technically healthy. So I really had to rewire the way that I viewed money and like detach my self-worth and who I was with the work and me and like money. I had to do a lot of work in that department.
I resonate so much with what you just said there because I breadwin in my house. My husband's a disabled veteran, and when things go wrong, or like a contract ends and doesn't renew, or a large income stream is like done, or something like that, and I'm like, I go into the panic mode. I'm like, my chest gets tight. I will like wake up in the middle of the night and be like, I need to figure out how to fix this, and I'm like, okay, might as well just get up. It's 4 a.m. Let's go email people. Like I still do that very toxically, and it's very much this idea. It's like, well, if I don't do this, my family's going to starve. Like it just becomes this whole narrative in my brain. And it really does make you feel that like all of my like value to my family is based off of how much money I can make so that they can have all of the things that they want or need and provide basic stuff. And so it's really I think it is important as creators to do that self work to be like, hey, there's more to you than just holding a camera and doing sponsored posts. Like you're a multifaceted, multi-layered human being, and what you do online is just this small like part of it, and it's separating out. Like we just had Scott Simpson on, and he said, he and his family stopped being family vloggers because his kids were like, "Daddy, why do we only have fun when the camera's on?" Like it's really that idea of like, let's separate these things out and build multiple parts of our life that give us that well-rounded person so that you can then be happy in all areas of your life. We have to counter this, right? We had our bad money situation. What's been your most successful money situation that you've gotten to, like cool brand deal, anything like that?
Yeah, I would say, well, I love working with brands that I would say value me as a creator, so allow me to do what I do best. And I had this contract for 3 years in a row with a brand where I just really felt valued as a creator. I was able to create the content that I want to create, how I wanted to create it. And it was like a So it'll be throughout the year. So I had to do three different waves of content, and they would pay me very well just for me to be myself, just for me to wash my hair. And for me, it was like a full circle moment because I told you where my story started with my hair, really not knowing what to do with it. And even, having the elders in the family telling me that my hair is rough, it's terrible, you got to do something with it. That's just like the message, like you got to change your hair. And for me now, flipping it and being in a space where I'm getting paid to do my hair, I think it's kind of a flex. So I would say that particular window comes to mind where it's like it was really good. Like I enjoyed working with companies where, again, I feel like I'm able to be myself.
To take a look at your pie chart, we break down our different income streams that you have been able to create for yourself as a creator. 30% of your income does come from AdSense, and you have 50% of your income coming from sponsorships. You and I met because we're both in Justin Moore's Brand Wizard cohort like community where all everyone talks about is money. And so what have you been able to do in the past couple of years since going full time to like make sponsorship something that isn't this like pain in the butt chasing money like situation? Like what are you doing with sponsorships that we can learn from?
Well, I feel like I'm still there actually in the brand deal hamster wheel, if you were to call it that. And I don't love it. I don't love that aspect of having most of my income coming from brand deals because it's so volatile. It's up and it's down. It depends on, like, I just feel like I'm relying on another company paying me and also paying me my worth, what I want them to pay me. And there's a lot of creators, obviously, now, especially with, I feel like there's an influx of creators in this space now that are doing the same thing. And so I feel like I'm constantly like pitching to brands and trying to negotiate with brands, and just that aspect of it I don't love as much as I love being the creative and I love creating the content. I feel like that's how I started and that's where my heart still lies. Like I enjoy just thinking of a way to talk about whatever. Being creative that way, that's where I enjoy. What I'm doing actually now is trying to diversify my income even more. So I'm not just relying on YouTube AdSense or just sponsorship, but really having my own product that I can offer. And like I said, I really want to inspire a lot of people's particular women to like challenge their mindset, challenge where they are blocked and may not even realize it. So I really want to come up with my own product and services around that, and even around being an intentional creator, because I feel like I struggled so much in my career. It took me like 10 years to really get to where I am today, where I'm like, hang on, you know what? I would have suffered a whole less if I had a strategy from the beginning. So I really want to like challenge new creators or even creators that have been in the field for a little bit and just have been, I don't know, doing whatever, creating poster content and hope that things come together. I really want to help them because I would have loved if someone had helped me when I was struggling and just creating content just to create content and hoping that it magically comes together. So basically diversifying even more.
Do you think that also like your unique selling proposition, does it help you or hinder you with create with finding sponsorships and brand deal stuff? Because you do a lot with the curly hair. You're a woman of color. Like do you navigate that? And again, does it help you or does it hinder you with your opportunities?
What do you mean by that?
So one of the things that Justin always talks about in his program is you have to find your unique selling proposition. What is it about you that makes you a unique person for brands to work with? Like in my case, it's things like I've been a creator for 15 years. I am a woman. I am also a mother. I am also in the military, spouse, veteran sort of community. Like those are the things that set me apart as a creator in this space. I would think that with what you do in beauty, you have a wonderful angle with being able to, because you talk about women of color hair, you have, Black beauty, being a mom, all of those other layers within it, or being Haitian as well. But sometimes those things can also be really limiting, right? Sometimes people are like, well, I don't want to talk to you because I don't care about military spouse stuff. Or I don't care about the fact that you're a woman or not, or whatever. We're looking for someone who fits this bill or whatever. So do you find that your unique selling proposition helps you, hinders you, or is it even like, well, there's so many beauty creators, it's getting in the way, like that sort of an angle about it?
No, I don't find it as a hindrance at all. Like I know there's a lot of beauty creators, but I think that my story is unique in itself. And that is my superpower. Just me being myself, me being just open with the stories that I tell, especially when I talk about my own journey, when I talk about how I grew up around natural hair, for example, or even beauty, and how I felt as a child. And, my mom or anybody who would take care of my hair will be like, "Oh my God, this chore. We got to change your hair. We got to straighten it." Like I think that's what makes me connect well with my audience. And I think that, if anything, is my superpower, because I have a story behind the beauty. There's a story behind how I show up. And I don't take that for granted at all. You think you mentioned a little bit. I basically took all the negative from my childhood and I turned them into positives now, into as I grew older, because I don't agree with a lot of these messaging. And even now that I have a daughter, I look at her and I'm like, "Your hair is so pretty, your skin is so pretty." Like, I tell her the exact opposite of what I grew up, and that's how I connect with my audience as well, because it's like, no, it wasn't right the way that we grew up. And a lot of it has to do with just racism and especially growing up from the islands, white supremacy. Like, we see white as better than black. So a lot of this had a lot to do with how I grew up, but I just know that that's not true. So I'm changing and flipping the narrative. So that's my superpower. If a brand wants to work with me and they allow me to do what I do, I just feel like that's how you connect with, well, that's how I connect with my audience. And ultimately, that's how the sales happen.
I think it's a really beautiful way to connect, because I think that so many of us will hear a specific narrative for so long and it becomes this thing that becomes like a negative identity attached to us. And being able to find people that are helping us change our mindset around ourselves so that we can be better is always going to be so helpful. And I think that you're right. That is a superpower, and brands, I hope, understand that your connection with your audience around your unique story is what allows, it should be why they work with you, and also why they should pay you a lot for it too.
Absolutely.
Your other income streams that we have, you have 5% that comes from affiliates, you have 2% from merch, 3% from the Amazon Creator Program, and then 10% from syndications, licensing, and royalties. I would love to know more about how you're syndicating and licensing your content.
That's interesting because it's still under brand deals, but a lot of brands would say, if I work with a brand and they want to circle back around and say, "We want to use this content for whatever." And I pour my heart and soul when it comes to creating my content. I make sure that it stands out, like I just talked about. I make sure that there's a story behind it, that it has an impact. I don't know. I just really why this is what I enjoy. Like, I enjoy just thinking outside the box as I create my content, because so many people can just put on makeup and like, "Oh, I love this foundation," or do their hair and "I love this product." But I usually try to bring a story with the content, or why I use this product, or why it matters, or whatever. So I find that a lot of brands will connect with it, like, okay, we'll do the sponsorship, it'll be done, but then the content will do so well afterwards that they still want to use it. And that's why I'm like, "Oh, well, you got to pay me the big bucks then if you want me to use that, or if you want to use it again." And I actually make a little bit more with a lot of my deals that way. So then if they want to use it on a different platforms, or for a certain amount of time, put ads behind it or amplify it, mediocre brand deal into a really good one.
It's a really underlooked opportunity. Like, so many of us are like, "Oh yeah, of course." Like, cuz they think like, "Oh, it's going to be so good for me because I'm going to be able to get in front of more people and all that stuff." But
I always say exposure does not pay the bills. And I feel like there's such a lack of education, at least within my community, that I've noticed. Because when I started to take this seriously, I would talk to other creators, other Black creators, like, "How do you do this? How do you do that? How do you get paid?" And a lot of people just don't know. They give away the rights for free. They allow brands to take their content, chop it up, and do whatever with it. They give it away. They don't realize that, hey, that's actually valuable. The reason why they're reaching out to you is because you're valuable and your content is valuable. And I think a lot of people get stuck with, "Oh, they noticed me, so I'm going to do whatever they want me to do." And it's like, well, the fact that they notice you does not pay the bills. And the exposure that you quote unquote going to get from whatever to do with your content is also not going to pay the bills. So giving away your content is a big no-no. And I've had to learn, I learned that the hard way, because at the beginning I was giving away everything. I just didn't even know that was a thing. Like, I have content that I've sold the rights to in perpetuity that's sitting on a brand store right now, like forever. And there's nothing I can do about it because I signed the contract.
I need to do an episode that's like 10 things all creators are doing wrong that's keeping them from doubling that money bag. And that is one of those big ones that's like, because it's just, you don't know. And you can't be expected to know. Like a lot of like the stuff that I know that I don't know about you, I had learned was going through Justin's course, where Justin's like, perpetuity is the worst word in the world, and things like that. So it's a whole thing. So
Now, I really had to invest a lot in myself and my education as a creator for me to be where I am today and like understand how this industry actually works. Because you, like I said, you get into it and the message is just post the content and it's all gonna work out. And you start posting and maybe you start getting these opportunities, but you don't really understand them. You don't understand what you should be doing and where you should be charging. And you can charge for so many different things as well. And that lack of knowledge, I think, holds a lot of creators back.
what is your next money move?
My next money move is really stepping into coaching. Like I said, lack of education is holding a lot of creators back. And I really want to find my flow there. So that's what I'm working on. I'm working on a lot of things actually. And this year I'm really challenging myself to really move into these areas that scares me. But like I have realized that there is such a huge gap of education within my community when it comes to creators. A lot of us just don't know what we're doing. And it doesn't help because you can have, the, and I don't want to like harp on brands, but at the end of the day, they're sending in emails to like 200 creators, and they will find a lot of people that says yes to getting the products and posting about it and not getting paid or giving away the rights or just doing all of these work for free just because they didn't know, or just a lot of creators that struggle with their mindset, because that was me for a long time as well, kind of going back and forth, the hoopla we goes in our mind about can this work, should it work, like just not really believing in ourselves. And that's how I want to position myself as like a coach online and really help new creators and up and coming inspiring creators to be the best version of themselves online and really have an impact and inspire others just by working on themselves. Because at the end of the day, you really can't have an impact if you're broke and you don't know what you're doing.
That's gonna go on a shirt. You can't make impact if you're broke. Please, all
You can't.
day, forever and ever. It's getting written down, right? That was so. It was so fantastic to talk with you, Jen. I love your story, your journey, and how you've been able to just create something amazing for you and your family. It's wonderful. We will have all the information to where you can connect with Jen and learn from her. And if you want, get some coaching with her over at www.thefundedyoutuber.com. Thank you so much. And until next week, go make that money. Peace. The Funded YouTuber is brought to you by Gigastar, a parent company of Gigastar Market, an SEC registered funding portal, and member of FINRA. Learn more at gigastar.io. Neither Gigastar nor its affiliated companies provide legal, regulatory, financial, or tax advice. Any opinions expressed herein are those of the authors and are the informational purposes only. The information and opinions expressed herein are subject to change without notice and do not take into account the particular investments, objectives, financial situation, or needs of any specific investors.